Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to another edition of Intuitive Angling, and thanks for watching today's video. Really appreciate it, and definitely thankful to all you guys out there that follow the channel regularly and spend some time with me every day. So if you're one of those viewers, I really appreciate it, and thanks a lot for that. Guys, today we're going to review the BFL Ozark division that I just got done fishing the last tournament of the year yesterday at Lake of the Ozarks. And I sort of want to go over the season, sort of give you guys a little season recap. I think you might learn something from the things I did right, learn something from the things I did wrong, and I think it might make for an interesting topic of conversation here, so we're going to get into that. And guys, before we get started in the video here, I wanted to remind everybody about our shopping collections feature on the channel. If you guys like the content here I put out, one good way to support it and show that support is if you go to my YouTube homepage and click on shopping. That's just a bunch of stuff YouTube allows us to put in there, and if you purchase something off that list, we get a small percentage of that. So much appreciated if you check that out. And guys, we're also, before we get started in today's video, I want to thank everybody yesterday up at Lake of the Ozarks. Man, I had a ton of people come up to me at the weigh-in and said they watch the channel, they like it, and showed their appreciation for the videos. That meant a ton to me, guys, and thank each and every one of you guys if you're watching the video that came up to me. I really appreciate that a lot. Thanks a lot. Okay, guys, finished up yesterday, BFL Lake of the Ozarks. Good news is I qualified for the regional championship on Lake Eufaula, Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma next month. In the BFLs, they take the top 45 at the end of the year to the regional championship, and I think I finished 34th or 36th, something like that. So qualified for the championship. And guys, the Ozark division is a freaking division full of hammers, man. It's got Dion Hibden, Lawson Hibden, all the freaking locals in every tournament. Guys like Marcus Secor and Lake of the Ozarks. You got at Table Rock, you got all the Table Rock guides down there. It is a circuit loaded with full of hammers. And we had between 100 and I think our smallest tournament was 175 and our biggest was like 230. So it's not that easy to do good there. I mean, you got to catch some fish to do. So it's if you guys fish the Ozark division, you know what I'm talking about there. But anyway, I wanted to give you my thoughts on this year, sort of what was my train of thought, and I got some opinions on that. I'd be curious to hear your guys' on this too. My intention on this, my goal for the Ozark division was to qualify for that championship. And in doing so, I approached it a little bit different, because in most tournaments, I go out and I'm focused on what I have to do to get into the top 10, because you can't really make any you can't really make any money in these tournaments unless you finish in the top 10. But in the BFLs, the money is so minimal, but you have to qualify for the BFL All-American to have a shot at any big money. So I wanted to make the championship in order to keep my odds alive for making the All-American. So in the circuit this year for the BFLs, I didn't go out there trying to fish to make the top 10s. I tried to catch a limit every day of the tournament. And I caught a limit every day of the season this year. I caught a limit at all three of the Table Rock tournaments. I only caught 3 at our first Lake of the Ozarks tournament, and I caught a limit yesterday over there. So I had limits in 4 of the 5 tournaments, pretty much to accomplish that goal with that. But one of the things that struck me with this was the fact that I caught limits in 4 of the 5 tournaments, but I only made 1 check all season long. All of my limits that I caught this year were between 11 and 13 pounds. And those were basically not good enough for a check. The biggest limit I had, almost 13 something at that Table Rock tournament. I squeaked in one of the last checks. But it goes to show you the impact that live scope and forward-facing sonar has on these tournaments. Because even though I think live scope sucks, this isn't a live scope bashing tournament. I want to talk about the relevance of it as far as the weights that it takes to do better. Because literally, I mean, I'm sure there's other guys out there. I don't know anyone else out there that did not fish without live scope besides myself this year. Every tournament that I was at, with the exception of one tournament we had at Table Rock when all the fish were on the beds, everybody talked about live scope. When you were at the bag line, live scope, live scope, live scope, live scope. I saw this on live scope. Everything live scope out there. So one of the things that I've noticed about it is the live scopers out there, the people that were cashing the checks, were live scoping those fish. And the difference between the weight is, although I was catching my limit every day, that weighed 11 to 13 pounds, they were catching limits every day that weighed 12 to 14 pounds, getting in the check range. It's almost like the live scope gave them another, 1 to 2 pound advantage over just regular bass fishing. That's as far as the overall weights go. That's one of the common threads that I've really seen, and that's why when you look at tournament weights, again, it's not necessarily the fisheries are getting any better, because the weights that I caught, if you look traditionally throughout the what it took to do well in tournaments and make checks, traditionally the weights that I have been catching, that 11 to 13 pound range, would get you checks in tournaments. And now it's not doing that. It's like, in order for you to get a check in almost any tournament with the advent of forward-facing sonar, you have to catch a limit every day, and you have to have at least one, and most of the time, 2 kicker fish. Now, what I mean by kicker fish, let's say, for example, if you're at Table Rock Lake and the average keeper there weighs 2 pounds, 15-inch keeper fish, you pretty much got to have 1 to 2 4-pounders with your limit just to get a check. And 25 years ago, it wasn't like that, guys. It was, if you caught a limit of fish, more than not, you were in the money almost every single time. It's like, if you caught a double-digit bag, 10 to 12 pounds, it was almost guaranteed that you were going to get some type of a check. And it's not like that anymore. Most of the tournaments that we go to, it takes a minimum of 13 pounds to get a check in the Ozark division, sometimes more, with the advent of forward-facing sonar and live scope there. So that's one of the challenges with that. And what that does for the bass anglers that think live scope sucks, like me, is that you put yourself in a position behind the 8 ball, because what you have to do is you have to perform at a perfect level to compete. Because like yesterday, I'll give you a prime example, guys. Yesterday, I was flipping boat docks with, my block of old school jig up there. And the first bite that I got, I set the hook on it, and it was I could tell it was a big one. It was right on the end of the dock on a certain part. And I set the hook on it, and it's bowing me up and pulling like that. And it pulls off, and it had the chunk had flipped around and wrapped on the hook, and the fish got off. I didn't even get a hook in the fish. And I wound up with 11.5 pounds, and I would have culled out a pound and 3/4 fish with that fish. It was probably a 4 to 5 pound fish, and that would have put me in the check range like that. And so when you're not live scoping, you can't do that. You've got to land 100% of those fish. You've got to fish with 100% efficiency to overcome the unfair advantage that forward-facing sonar offers anglers out there. But anyway, looking back with that, one of the things that I can take away from this particular thing is that if you're going to do well in these local tournaments, these aren't local, regional tournaments like that, you have got to put yourself around the biggest fish in the lake, even at that level there. And don't get me wrong, because when I say at that level, the BFL guys are just as good as the Bassmaster Elite Pros. Now, I know some of you guys are going to be taken back by that statement, but if you take out, the upper level dudes out there, like the top 10 guys that are just sort of freaks of nature, there's no difference between the hammers and the BFLs and the anglers that fish the Bassmaster Elite Series. There's not. Dion Hibden was in this tournament. I guarantee Marcus Sequoia, if he was in the Elite Series, he'd do good. You can't, just because anglers don't fish that circuit doesn't mean their skill levels are not that good. So in doing so, you have to put yourself around what you consider the biggest fish in the area and the maximum odds of catching those biggest fish. You can't go out there and just say, well, I'm just going to go out and try to get my limit. that may work as far as in certain events out there, but even when I was talking about just, my focus was trying to get 5 fish a day, I wasn't out there weenie worming around with a Ned rig or something. I was still fishing those baits that produce big fish, but I was fishing a pattern that was more conducive to catching numbers of fish rather than numbers of quality fish rather than lone big fish or just keeper fish out there. So the approach is a little bit different. In other words, with that, is you've got to step your game up, even at the BFL level out there, even at the club level, you have to do that. So I don't know, I keep looking back and saying what I would have done different, but it's very difficult to say, because let me give you one example about how difficult and how mysterious and how much we don't know about bass fishing is. The first day of practice down at Lake of the Ozarks this week, I threw a topwater all day long. All day, and never had one bite, not one single bite on a topwater. And I talked to a friend of mine up there that same day, he was in a different part of the lake, and that's all he caught, like 30 fish on topwater. So when I hear that, it's like, what is the deal with that? I threw a freaking topwater all day long, and my buddy got 30 bites on a topwater, and I never got a bite on it. And that is what I'm talking about in bass fishing, the fine line between success and failure. It can be something as simple as the area. I know for sure he was like 20 miles away from where I was, because it could have been a different water clarity level. He could have been throwing a different color topwater. The retrieve could have been different. Bass fishing, there's a fine line, guys, a fine, tiny line between success and failure. So don't beat yourself up. If you go out there and don't have, a really good day on the water and somebody else does, don't let it affect your self-esteem, because most of the time it's a matter of making the right decision. And instead of throwing a black topwater, or maybe I should have thrown a shad pattern topwater. It's those decisions like that make everything with that. But anyway, again, thanks for following along for the BFL season this year. I'll give you the report when we go down to Lake Eufaula next month on the regional championship. Let you guys know how it goes down there. And also, we got another tournament at Lake of the Ozarks, our Toyota Series tournament in 2 weeks down there. I'll keep you guys updated with that. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys.